What if the United States doesn't just embrace Bitcoin, but makes it the cornerstone of our international power like gold or oil?
Do you have a personal goal for the number of Bitcoin that the United States could have? I've heard 1 million thrown out there as a nice big round number.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different senators and other folks on the Hill talk about specific numbers, but, I'd like it to be infinite. I want as much as we can possibly accumulate. And the reality is, I've told many people this, and especially journalists, is they say, well, is there an exact number? Well, no, not really, because, that's like saying how much gold do you want as a country? Anything else with intrinsic stored value, you want as much as you can possibly accumulate, and that's no different with Bitcoin.
Hines is one of the lead crypto advisors for Donald Trump's Council of Digital Assets. In his recent interview, he explains his vision of the role that America will play in crypto. He talks about the government-wide push to create regulatory support for Bitcoin and the broader crypto infrastructure, like mining operations, integration into public financial systems, favorable tax treatment, and deregulation industry-wide. This is big because most politicians only promise and never deliver. But this time, I think it's different. Trump's messaging is very consistent. The goal is to make America the global leader in crypto. And he's taking steps to make that happen daily. He recently signed the Bitcoin Reserve and Digital Stockpile Executive Order, which allows America to hold Bitcoin like gold, which I think is a great move, because this will give America soft power and allow us to front run the crypto revolution. He also built his administration with crypto enthusiasts working hard behind the scenes to make it happen. Hines has consistently expressed that we should buy an infinite amount of Bitcoin to secure our dominance as a Bitcoin superpower globally. Now let's break this down. Welcome to TSG Crypto. We cut through the noise and we prepare you for the new era of finance. If you are invested in crypto or thinking of investing in crypto, subscribe to the channel so we can help you navigate through your crypto journey. Now let's get into the video.
Well, I think that we made it very clear in the way that we structured the executive order that we recognize Bitcoin as being unique. And we've said repeatedly that we view Bitcoin as digital gold. And a question that I get from journalists all the time is, how much do you want? And I think that's really a silly question. That's like asking any country, how much do you want of any asset with intrinsic stored value? You want as much as you can possibly accumulate. There are stipulations in the EO. We must do this in budget neutral ways that don't cost the taxpayer a dime. But as the president likes to say, we have a lot of high IQ people in this administration, specifically over at Treasury and at Commerce. And I'm very confident in the leaders in those buildings to come up with extremely creative ways for us to accumulate. And we're very excited about that. And certainly we want to move as expeditiously as possible to do that. I think that there is definitely a sort of space race as it pertains to accumulation of this asset, no different than there is with gold, right? So we're very excited about it. I think one thing I'd like to point out too about that executive order is that we recognize the other ecosystems that exist, and that's why we have the Digital Assets National Stockpile as well. We want to encourage innovation in other spaces in the industry, but I think it's really important that we do recognize Bitcoin for its uniqueness. And like you've described, it's a finite asset. It's a commodity, not a security. It has the immaculate conception, as David has said, and that intrinsic stored value piece is there. It's been well adopted by the marketplace at this point. So, I feel like we're well on our way. I think we positioned ourselves to be the Bitcoin superpower of the world. And, we're going to deliver on the president's desires as it relates to that.
The policy shift for crypto is honestly a breath of fresh air. The current administration is ending Choke Point 2.0 and has already hosted the first ever White House Crypto Summit. Things are moving fast, and it seems like everybody is warming up to the crypto space. This seems like the path to mainstream adoption is right around the corner, and we are still early. It's not often that every government agency agrees on something across the board, but this time, for the most part, they are. And I think everyone is starting to see the massive use case for crypto. The traditional payment systems, come on, let's face it, they're slow and fragmented. A wire between two different countries could take days and involve multiple intermediaries and rack up endless fees. Crypto solves that problem. Blockchain transactions are faster, cheaper, and can be sent anywhere in the world 24/7. You also have the ability to self-custody your own crypto. No more frozen bank accounts. No more banks telling you what you can or can't spend your money on. It makes your money truly your money. This makes financial services faster and more accessible and 24/7. In today's world, we move faster than ever, and we need a financial system that keeps up and moves just as fast as us and on demand whenever we need it. Think about that. Now let's get into the video.
Well, I think more generally, it speaks to President Trump's leadership in this space. He made it very clear on day 3 with an executive order that he was going to be the crypto president. And, that executive order basically outlined several different things. It created the interagency working group, in which I'm the executive director of. And then obviously we have our brilliant AI and crypto czar, David Sachs, who many folks are familiar with in the financial world, obviously with his VC success and everything else he's done in the business community. But this executive order created this working group. It also established some timelines that we had to hit. The first timeline was the 30-day landmark, which required these agencies to basically do an internal audit or review of everything they were touching inside the digital asset space, really looking over those rules and regulations that, oftentimes had been misguided, specifically under the Biden regime. So, we looked at those rules and regs, then we hit the 60-day landmark, which compelled the same interagency actors to provide a list of recommendations, things that they thought that they could do independently in order to deliver on the president's promise to make the United States the crypto capital of the world. And so now we have this 180-day landmark that's on the horizon in which we'll go through these recommendations, we'll comb through all the reports, and then we'll produce, a comprehensive piece of work that'll basically say this is what needs to happen inside of a regulatory framework for the United States to be the crypto capital of the world and promote innovation, allow digital asset firms to thrive here in the United States. And, pivoting to your question about the SBR, the president has made it very clear that we're going to be the Bitcoin superpower of the globe. He's said that repeatedly.
Sounds great.
It does. It's amazing. And, David and I worked diligently with many others inside of the White House to craft what we thought was the best solution for the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And look, we wanted to recognize Bitcoin for being unique because it is. It's a commodity, not a security. It has intrinsic stored value. It has the immaculate conception, as David likes to say. And, the way that we set this up, we recognized it for what it is, which is being unique. And then we also had the digital assets national stockpile because really we wanted to encourage the innovation that's happening across other ecosystems in the space as well. But we wanted to harness Bitcoin for the American people. We view it as being in our long-term interest to hold on to this asset. We obviously have made it very clear that we want to acquire as much as we can get. I've said that repeatedly throughout my time on the speaking circuit over the course of the last few months. And look, at the end of the day, it stipulates that we have to acquire Bitcoin in budget neutral ways that don't cost the taxpayer a dime. With that being said, I think that we have, as the president likes to say, many high IQ people working on these solutions, and we're going to have countless ideas on how we can accomplish this. And look, we have Secretary Lutnick at Commerce, we have Secretary Bessent at the Treasury, many other great actors inside the interagency working group, and we'll come together and flesh out some of these ideas and really get to the best solution. But we're very confident that we can do so, and we'll start doing that in short order.
Now, these ideas of acquiring more Bitcoin, I know that none of them have been decided on, but there are many that I think are somewhat obvious of, hey, you could revalue gold, sell it, move things over to Bitcoin. But I think that people drastically are underestimating maybe net new ideas. And so as you guys have been brainstorming, are there themes to things that you guys are thinking about? And, there's one thing to take American taxpayer dollars that are already somewhere within the US government or on our balance sheet and kind of rearrange, right? Financial advisors all the time, they'll go and they'll rebalance their portfolio. That's kind of one whole theme. But then I've also seen Lutnick and others talk about this idea of, well, maybe there's external revenue that we can drive and be able to use that. And so how are you guys maybe from a framework standpoint thinking about, okay, what are the ways that we could go buy more Bitcoin?
Well, I think that Senator Lummis has really an interesting idea with the Bitcoin Act of 2025, which I know has taken the community by storm. But here, what you would do is you'd revalue the gold certificates that we currently have at Treasury. Most of which are valued, I think, around $43 an ounce, which is,
a lot lower than what it's really worth.
Correct. Yeah. So now we're sitting at $3,100 an ounce, with being the price of gold. And if you took that value, what you could do is use that extra funding in order to buy more Bitcoin that could be used for the reserve. But that's just one idea. And, that's currently circulating its way through Capitol Hill, and we'll see how many co-sponsors she can get and how she can pull her colleagues on board. But we're looking at many creative ways, whether it be from, tariffs, whether it be from something else. I mean, there's literally countless ways in which you can do this. And, I'll defer to, some of our members inside of the interagency working group to see what ideas they come up with inside of their own shops. But we'll we'll look at everything. Everything's on the table. And like we've said, we want as much as we can get. So we're going to make sure that no stone is unturned as we start fleshing out some of these processes.
Do you have a personal goal for the number of Bitcoin that the United States could have? I've heard 1 million thrown out there as a nice big round number.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different senators and other folks in the Hill talk about specific numbers, but I'd like it to be infinite. I want as much as we can possibly accumulate. And the reality is, I've told many people this, and especially journalists, is they say, well, is there an exact number? Well, no, not really, because that's like saying how much gold do you want as a country? Anything else with intrinsic stored value, you want as much as you can possibly accumulate, and that's no different with Bitcoin.
So how does all of this bullish sentiment affect us, and how do we cash in on what's coming next? If Bo Hines and the team at the White House continue at this pace, we could be on the verge of embracing crypto completely, and in a way no other government ever has. That will change the global crypto landscape forever. This will supercharge innovation and unlock massive new wealth. So all we can really do is take action. We have to front run mainstream adoption. So that way we can cash in on the value that mass adoption curve will bring. But what do you think? If this video was helpful, subscribe to the channel. And if you have anything to add to the conversation, comment down below. Thanks for watching.